and welcome back to Dessert Devotion. I can't wait to show you a great cookie recipe and an inspiring devotional. Today we're going to knock your socks off with giant Toffee chocolate chip cookies. We're going to start our recipe with 3 sticks of room temperature butter. You know you're serious when you start with that much butter. And then I'm going to add 3/4 cup granulated sugar and 1.5 cups of light brown sugar. I whip mine for about 1 to 2 minutes until the mixture is nice and fluffy. Now I'm going to slow down my mixer and add 2 beaten eggs and 1.5 tablespoons of vanilla. Now we're ready for our dry ingredients. I have 4 1/4 cups all-purpose flour, and to my mixture I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Slowly I'm going to add this flour mixture to my batter. As you can see, it's a pretty thick dough. Now I'm ready to add 1.5 cups of chocolate chips. I prefer the Ghirardelli brand, and 1/2 cup of Toffee chips. These cookies remind me of those giant Crumbl cookies. So each cookie is going to be about 1/2 cup of dough. I'm going to place about 6 of these on a cookie sheet. I'll bake these on 375 for about 10 to 11 minutes. So now that our cookies are in the oven, it's time for us to settle into our devotion. And I am so delighted for this dessert devotion to have my cousin with me, Brianna Hamblin. She's with News Channel 5 in Nashville as a reporter. And so she's come down to Columbus to spend some time with me and my family. It has been way too long, y'all, so I'm so delighted that we could finally do this. We've been talking about doing a dessert devotion together for some time now.
I'm so excited to be here, and all your desserts look so delicious, so I'm very excited to eat
And
them.
now you get to eat one in person. So yes, we're going to have a lot of fun in the kitchen today. Well, for this special Thanksgiving dessert devotion, we of course want to focus on the practice of gratitude. So I want to start off by reading 1 Thessalonians. It's the 5th chapter, verses 16 through 18, where it reads, "Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you." It really, the practice of giving thanks, of having gratitude and a grateful posture is the will of God, is something that God wants us and desires for us. And so I think it's important to think about it that way, because I think naturally, it's not my human tendency to always be grateful. I think it's kind of my tendency to sometimes to complain, to notice what's wrong, to kind of pick apart the things that I don't like or what I think is missing. So sometimes we really have to be intentional, right, when it comes to gratitude. So we've been kind of talking about ways that we can be intentional about gratitude and thinking about kind of aspects of gratitude. One is thinking about the people that are in our lives and how we can be grateful for them, right? Because there are people that just drop into our lives. Sometimes they've been there forever. They've been a part of our family. Sometimes they're coworkers or friends that are just in our life for a season, and we just think, if they had not been there during that time, like, I don't know where I would be.
Yes.
Sometimes people we don't even know that well can really just turn the tide in our lives and just make things just completely different. And you know that if you had not met that person, or if they had not been there right then, that your life could have gone in a completely different direction.
Yeah. Yes, and I know I'm so grateful for you. So thank you. I'm grateful to be here, to finally see you, to hang out with your boys, and you've always been an inspiration for me. So
my goodness.
For you. But there's countless people, like you say, people that you don't even know. Like in Rochester, there was like an accident where I fell, and I had people come together that I just was able to call on, and they were able to like bring me food, help me walk my dog. So just unexpected friends everywhere. So
yeah, and definitely we see this as God providing for us, right? That people, when we sometimes you don't even know when that accident is going to happen, you know, where you had a concussion and you don't know who your friends are. You hadn't been in Rochester that long.
Yes.
And so for God to kind of provide people that are like, hey, I'll be there and take care of you when you can't do it for yourself, you know, it means so much. And it's like, you know that God is looking out for you, sending the right people, you know, in the right time. One thing to be grateful for also are those certain moments in our life, you know, moments where we maybe learned that life lesson, that hard-earned life lesson sometimes, times that we say, you know, I am better for what I've been through or what I've learned. Sometimes just moments of generosity. Like you said with your friends in Rochester, I know my friends in England sometimes would just blow me away with the time that they would pour into me. I remember I was working on my master's at another base further south in England. It was about 4 hours from mine, and there was one shift where I was working night shift like you do now as a reporter. I got up at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I had to be down there for class, and I got permission to come in late because I was going to get there at 10 a.m. And my girlfriend called me and said, hey, before you leave base, come by my house. And she had prepared breakfast and the huge vat of coffee just for me to go down. I thought she had to get up at 5 a.m. to do this, you know? She could have just been like, girl, good luck. You know what I mean? And I'd be like, oh, that's thoughtful. She's thinking of me. But she went the extra mile to kind of take care of me because she knew that was a goal that was important for me. And I thought, wow, that's what a real friend looks like. Yeah. I need to be more like that, you know, these moments of generosity. But also our mistakes. Ooh, you know, no one wants the mistakes. I know, like, I look at mistakes and I just will play it back in my mind of what I could have done differently to avoid them. It's certainly painful going through it. But sometimes it is the mistakes that gets our attention the most, right? Where we really stop and say, okay, how do things need to be different? You know I made a big mistake just a couple of years ago with processing some paperwork for the Air Force, and I turned it in late. And it really kind of adversely affected my career for that year because I missed that deadline. And I missed it because I had so much on my plate with being a pastor, with being in the reserves, with being a mom, you know, with being a wife and friend, and just having so many things that I was involved in. After making that mistake, I really stopped and said, okay, you do a lot of things and you enjoy being busy, but you need to reprioritize and make sure that the most important things are done first and that they are always taken care of, right? And so I just, I was grateful for that mistake because it really, from that point on, changed how I managed my time, and I never made that mistake again, right?
Yeah, you really have to make the mistakes in order to learn. And then one thing about being a reporter is that you learn that dwelling on your mistakes makes things worse. So if I had my 4 a.m. live shot and I completely flubbed, if I think too hard about it, I'm just going to keep flubbing. So, so it's like you learn from it and you're like, all right, I'm just going to do better the next one because you have to just keep moving. So that was one thing, especially that I'm constantly learning myself, is like, okay, you're making a mistake, but you're only making mistakes because you are doing it, you're trying, you're doing the thing. Like,
yeah, you can't just not do it because you're afraid to mess up.
Exactly, and then you just have to move forward. The mistake and learn from it. So.
Exactly. Like, hey, I'm grateful that I'm learning it at this level. You know, when I get to the next level, these are the things that I already know, right?
Yeah, like, this is a new job. I can't expect to come and be 100% perfect the moment I start. So it just shows that I'm learning.
Absolutely. Another thing that we can be grateful for are those times where our faith has just moved us through. I mean, because there are times where it is really only our faith that kept us where we are, to be able to go moment to moment, day to day, when we weren't sure how things were going to turn out, when the physical evidence was not there, y'all, to know that it was going to be okay. It is really our resurrecting hope in Jesus to know that God has our back and desires the best for us, that helps us to really function and continue from day to day.
Yeah, I think that was a big lesson for me this year, just having faith that it'll all work out. You know, I love my time in Rochester, New York. I didn't expect I'd ever be there. And I luckily made some great friends, but then the contract was coming to an end. I had a boyfriend at the time.
Yes.
I was like, is he going to propose? Am I going to get the job? Are we going to be able to be in the same city? Yeah, and he proposed. I still was like, am I going to get a job and be able to move to the city?
Yeah.
I got the job, and it's like all these prayers that I had been asking for the last 2 years before ended up being answered. And I know we talked about, journaling, you know, what you're grateful for. So that was just like, and then things, just journaling in general so that you can look back. And that was one of the things where you spent 2 years praying and then you realize that it all worked out. And, you know, I'm like grateful, and I'm also like, sorry for questioning you, Lord, because you had it. You had it all handled. Like,
so. I couldn't see it because my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. But you really did come through anyway, even though I was like, I don't know what you're doing right now, you know? Yeah. And like you said, it's so important for us as a part of our practice of gratitude to write those things down or somehow take time to reflect on them, even if it's a meditation every day, like you say, having a prayer box or a prayer journal, so that we don't miss out on the little ways that and the big ways that God is moving. And it really encourages us for the next time to remember God had you back last time, it worked out, and it really encourages us for, the next time that we're in a place where we are just really uncertain. All right. So the last thing we talked about as like a practice of gratitude is telling stories, and because it's through those stories that we remember the ways that God has worked, the way God has placed people or moments with our family or friends in our lives, and how we've been enriched by that. And it also can be inspiring, right, to others, just like when you read the journals or you go back and look on it, and just telling those stories is a way to share that gratitude with other people. And I thought about that because last night you asked me, how old are you when Grandma passed away? What was she like? And I'm like, oh gosh, I am falling down on my job as big cousin because you weren't born yet when she passed away. And so you didn't get to know her, obviously, like I did, because I was in high school. I was 16. And I just began to think about last night all the stories that I have got to fill you in on so you can appreciate, who she was and how much she meant to me and how much she still means to our family. When I see like your adventurous spirit of going into journalism and living in different cities and just trying new things, I think about our grandma because she was really an adventurous person. She was the first Black supervising nurse in her hospital. When her husband died unexpectedly and she was caring for 4 kids that were still at home. My mom was the oldest of those kids, and she had just graduated high school. She not only was working double shifts as a nurse and taking care of her kids, but she also took over her deceased husband's funeral business and continued to direct with the funeral home and keep that going for years. In fact, when I was growing up, she was still running the funeral home after she retired. And I used to always daydream about other, grandmas and what they were maybe doing with their kids, their grandkids during the summers. I thought maybe they were baking cookies or knitting or, like planting gardens. I was working funerals, like I would come up to visit. And if we had a funeral that week, then that's what we did. I went with her. I was the flower girl. She showed me how to set up the flowers, whether it was for the visitation at the funeral home or whether it was transferring the flowers to the church and then setting up the graveside afterwards. I remember working with our Aunt Tama and setting up the chairs or breaking them down for wakes or visitations at the funeral home. And so I have just lots of great memories of her. And, we're very social people, and we love to plan and socialize and host. And that is from Grandma. It really is. I mean, she always had an open door. She wasn't one of these like prissy types that had to have all the matching napkins and glasses and that sort of thing. But she always had that open door and open kitchen. Like if anyone needs to come in and talk about something, if anyone wants to come by for a meal or even stay for a few months, her door was always open. So you never knew who was going to be there. And I just see that in you. And, so I'm going to be a better big cousin about that and share more of those stories of gratitude of who she was so we can have that together.
Yeah, thank you for telling me that. Yeah, I love hearing stories about Grandma because you're right, I didn't get to meet her, but she sounds like she was an amazing woman. And like you said, it helps us understand ourselves better, our mothers better. Yeah. My mom is the most social person I have ever met in my life.
She set somebody's record.
Yeah.
Yes, I know she has. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm always grateful to hear family stories.
Absolutely. Well, over this Thanksgiving, we're going to have more time to share those stories, and we certainly encourage you to remember that giving thanks and having that posture of gratitude is God's will in our life. And we pray a blessed Thanksgiving upon you and that you'll take time with your family to do the same.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, so we're going to check out these cookies now.
Which I'm very grateful for.
Yes. In my oven, these cookies were done in about 10 minutes, and I'm going to let them cool on the pan and add a little bit of sea salt for that sweet, salty flavor. Make this Thanksgiving in the kitchen a meaningful one, y'all, with the moments and people that mean the most to you. Thanks for joining me. For more inspiring dessert devotions, check out my website, DessertDevotion.com.